Ice Rink Cave Rescue. On May 25, 2003, Chris Molyneux, a 36-year-old cave explorer, planned a cave trip with his family to Ice Rink Cave in Washington. He had been inside caves before, but this time, he wanted to take his wife and kids with himself. They packed up and drove to the mountains. Chris brought his wife Michelle and their 3 young children. He parked their car about 200 yards from the cave entrance. Soon, they found a dark hole in the ground. Chris looked at it. He wasn't sure if this was the real entrance to Ice Rink Cave. To be safe, he decided to go in alone first. The cave got tighter and darker as he walked in. After about 100 feet, he found a small crawlway. It was only 18 inches high. Chris turned on his headlamp and checked his map. He believed this crawlway would lead to the main chamber of the cave. He got on his hands and knees and crawled through the tight space. On the other side, he stood up and found himself in a bigger tunnel. He started walking, but something felt wrong. He walked for a long time and still didn't find the main chamber. Then, he came across some fallen rocks. These rocks weren't shown on his map. He climbed over them and kept walking. Still, there was no sign of the main part of the cave. So Chris decided to turn back. He walked back the same way he came. Then, he found what looked like the crawlway, but it was blocked with dirt and rocks. He tried going the other way, but after walking a long distance, he found another blocked area, and it looked exactly the same. Chris was confused. There was only supposed to be one crawlway, not two. To test something, he drew a big X in the dirt with his finger. Then he walked the other way and counted his steps. After 400 steps, he saw the same X in the dirt. That's when he realized the cave was a loop. He was walking in circles. There was no way out. Chris started to panic. He had already been underground for over an hour. He tried to stay calm. He tore small pieces of his map and left them at different places to keep track of where he had been. Time passed slowly. After 5 hours of walking in circles, Chris was exhausted. He was thirsty. He couldn't think straight. He sat down and started to cry. He thought about his family. His wife and kids were waiting outside. That gave him the strength to keep going. He stood up and walked back to the blocked entrance again. This time, he stayed close to the wall and looked carefully at every inch. And finally, he saw it. Just 50 feet from the blocked entrance, behind a rock, was a small crawlway. It was the way out. He had passed it many times, but it was hard to see. Chris dropped to the ground and crawled through the opening as fast as he could. A few minutes later, he saw light. He was outside. He had been trapped in the cave for 6 hours. When Chris got out, his family wasn't there. They had left to get help. Later, he found out that Michelle had walked all the way back to the road with the kids and found someone to drive them to a ranger station. She returned with rescuers just as Chris was walking out of the cave. After this, the cave got a new name. It's now called Minotaur Cave because of the strange loop inside. The Weatherly Well Cave Incident. On February 11, 1998, 4 friends, James Lewis, Alan England, Darl Moore, and Jerry Olson, went on a caving trip. Jerry had recently found the cave while hiking in the Tennessee woods. The cave entrance was very small, only about 9 inches wide. That's about the size of a dinner plate. The narrow opening led down about 4 feet, then dropped 11 feet, followed by another 10-foot drop. The 4 friends stood at the entrance looking at the tiny, wet opening. It was dark and tight. From the surface, they could see the steep drop into the darkness below. The cave passages twisted and turned like a corkscrew, leaving very little room to move. Because the entrance was so narrow, only one person could go in at a time. The group carefully checked all their gear, especially their ropes. Alan England was the oldest at 63, but he was very fit and also the smallest. He volunteered to go first. The team tied a rope above the cave entrance. This rope would help Alan climb back out later. Alan took a deep breath and began to squeeze into the narrow slot. He had to twist and turn his body to fit. His clothes got wet from the damp cave walls as he pushed through. Once inside, Alan lowered himself down 7 feet with the help of the rope. The space opened up a little, and he could finally stretch his arms and legs. He shined his headlamp down to see the next part. There was another drop of about 10 feet and more twisting passages below. Alan wanted to explore more, but he knew it was too risky to go deeper alone. He decided it was safer to turn back. Climbing up was harder than going down. The rope helped, but when Alan reached the narrow slot again, he got stuck. What was easy to slide down was almost impossible to climb up. He tried to push through, but the slot was tighter than before. His wet clothes stuck to the rock, making it even harder to move. James and Darl saw Alan struggling. They pulled on the rope to help, but the tight space made it worse. Each pull wedged Alan deeper into the rock. Alan was getting tired. His hands shook from the cold and effort. The cave was very cold, and it was winter outside. His wet clothes made him shiver badly. The narrow space made it hard for him to breathe deeply. James and Jerry tried to help by lowering extra clothes and a warm drink. Alan drank the warm liquid, but he was still stuck and freezing cold. After a long time, Alan called out. He said he couldn't keep going and needed help. James and Jerry quickly hiked back to Jerry's house and called the East Tennessee Cave Rescue Team. Within 2 hours, the rescue team arrived. Alan had been trapped for nearly 5 hours. He was pale and shaking from the cold. He kept thinking about how easy it was to slide down the slot, but now he couldn't climb back up. The rescuers gave Alan more clothes and food to fight the cold. Then they set up a system of ropes and pulleys to pull him out carefully. The rescue was slow and painful. Alan felt the cold rock scraping his chest and shoulders as he was pulled out. The rescuers worked carefully to avoid hurting him more. After about an hour, Alan finally came out of the slot. He was bruised but alive. The cold air outside felt much better than the freezing cave. Even though he was exhausted and cold, Alan was determined to walk back to the car by himself. Roaring River Cave Incident. On October 14, 2022, a team of expert cave divers went to explore Roaring River Cave in Missouri. The cave was known for its deep underwater tunnels, and the team had a careful plan. Eric Hahn, a 27-year-old cave diver, had an important job. He had to place extra air tanks deep inside the cave. These tanks would be used as safety backups for the other divers. Eric was working with another diver. They should place the extra tanks at 130 feet and 190 feet underwater, and 2 other divers were going to explore the deeper parts of the cave. Before entering the water, the team checked all their equipment. They made sure their tanks were full and their lights were working. Eric was using a special breathing device called a rebreather. This machine recycles the diver's air. It removes carbon dioxide and adds oxygen. This helps divers stay underwater longer, but it can be dangerous if it's not used correctly. At around 11 in the morning, Eric entered the water. He followed a guide rope that would help him find the way back out. As he swam deeper, the water got colder and darker. His lights helped him see. Eric reached the 190-foot mark and saw one of the deep divers there. That diver said Eric seemed fine. He was placing one of the extra air tanks just like they had planned. But then something went wrong. Suddenly, Eric crashed into the other diver. Then he started swimming straight up very fast. This is extremely dangerous when you are deep underwater. The other diver, known as Diver 3, saw that Eric was in trouble. He swam after him and caught up when Eric hit his head on the rocky ceiling of the cave. Eric was struggling with his rebreather. Diver 3 tried to help by giving him a backup breathing hose, but Eric pulled his main mouthpiece out without closing it. That allowed water to rush into the system. Diver 3 quickly gave Eric the backup hose and cleared the water. But then, Eric started to shake. He was having a seizure. This type of seizure is called oxygen toxicity. It happens when a diver breathes too much oxygen at deep depths. It makes the diver lose control and stop breathing normally. Diver 3 held onto Eric and tried to keep the air hose in his mouth, but it was hard. Eric kept shaking, and they were very deep underwater. Then both of them sank to the bottom of the cave, 204 feet down. They kicked up dirt from the cave floor, and everything went dark. Diver 3 couldn't see the rope that showed the way out. He was tired, low on air, and completely disoriented. He knew if he stayed, he might also die. Meanwhile, another diver had already gone up to get help. Diver 3 made the hardest choice of his life. He let go of Eric and started to swim back up. As he rose, he met another diver, known as Diver 2. That diver tried to go down to find Eric, but he couldn't see clearly either. His oxygen levels were also becoming dangerous. He had to turn back too. By the time Diver 3 reached the surface, Eric had been missing for over 20 minutes. The team realized that Eric was no longer alive, and the rescue had turned into a recovery. The dive leader made the decision to stop all rescue attempts and ordered everyone to return safely. Later that day, around 4 p.m., a special recovery team from the Missouri Highway Patrol arrived. They found Eric's body about 200 feet deep in the cave. Acton Cave Tragedy. Amy Maria Arriaga, a 39-year-old woman, wanted to experience something new. She had always loved nature, and this time, she chose something bold: cave diving. So, she called her friend Alessandro. He had a lot of experience with diving. Amy asked him to teach her and join her on a diving trip to the Acton Caves in Mexico. After a few days of training, they were ready. Their plan was simple. Amy would lead the dive, swimming in front. Alessandro would follow behind her with a camera to record the adventure. They agreed not to go deeper than 40 feet. They would follow a line in the water to keep safe. At 11:26 in the morning, Amy and Alessandro jumped into the water. Amy led the way, and Alessandro followed behind with his camera. For 25 minutes, everything was going well. They swam and explored the underwater caves. Alessandro saw light coming from another cave entrance. This helped them know they were going the right way. A few minutes later, they passed a cave called No Name. Most divers avoid this area because it's dangerous. Amy and Alessandro swam past it without stopping. Then Alessandro saw something beautiful. Natural light was shining down into the water. He wanted to take a picture of Amy in this pretty light. To take a good picture, he needed to turn off his bright diving lights. While Alessandro turned off his lights, Amy kept swimming ahead. Amy came to a place where the path split into two caves. One cave was on the left, and one was on the right. She didn't look back at Alessandro because she didn't want him to think she was confused. She hoped she made the right choice. As soon as Amy entered the new cave, she knew something was wrong. It was very dark, so dark that even with her lights, she could only see a little bit ahead. Amy looked around for Alessandro, but he was not there. She flashed her lights on and off to try to signal him, but she couldn't see anyone. She tried again, but still no sign of him. At first, Amy wasn't too worried. Alessandro had been right behind her just moments ago. She was sure he would find her soon. Meanwhile, Alessandro turned off his lights and looked up to take Amy's picture, but she was gone. Just a moment ago, she was a few feet away, and now she had disappeared. He thought she must be up ahead waiting for him. He swam around to get a better view, but still couldn't see Amy or her lights. He waited for about 3 minutes, then removed the markers and line that showed where they had been. He was so sure she was ahead of him. This was a big mistake. Alessandro swam all the way to their meeting point, but Amy wasn't there. Now he was really worried. In the dark cave, Amy was scared. She had been waiting a long time and still no sign of Alessandro. She kept signaling with her lights as much as she could. Soon, Amy started to feel weak. Breathing became harder. She remembered that underwater, she needed her air tank to breathe. If she stayed too long, her air would run out. She tried not to panic. Alessandro had to find her. He was her only way out. Alessandro went back to the surface to look for Amy. His air had run out, so he needed to get another tank before going back to search for her. A few hours later, around 2:13 in the afternoon, Alessandro went back into the water alone. This time, he connected ropes and put markers along the way, hoping Amy might find them. A few minutes into his search near the no-name cave, Alessandro found Amy. Her body was floating in the water, her air tanks were empty, and she was not breathing.